I voted to remain, and I campaigned to remain. I did so because I thought that the referendum would be a huge period of uncertainty for the UK, which would diminish business investment, cause all sorts of divisions, but ultimately there were some benefits that we gained from EU membership, which were primarily to do with trade, that I thought we should be focused upon. The single market was the best reason for me for voting to remain. Well, one of the real sadnesses for me, actually, about the EU referendum has been the way it has divided families and workplaces and political parties and everywhere, and we need to come back together again. But one thing it has highlighted is how different sides of the argument haven't understood the other side of the argument, I think, very well, and that's a source of some debate and regret. I think it's very easy to imagine, as a Remainer, the reasons why people voted to leave, and I respect that. And I've read also in emails, constant emails in fact, how many people have said, well, actually those who voted to leave didn't understand what they were doing. Well, I don't accept that. I think they did know what they were voting for. I think they were clear about it. Whether or not people were detailed enough about how the legal complexity would work, not at all. They were voting on the principle. They understood that principle. And the failure to understand the other side of the argument is, I think, a source of some regret. Well, I've never been somebody who said we should leave, but there have been times when I have been very frustrated with the EU. I've tried to get EU directives changed as a transport minister, and things that were entirely unintended consequences of EU directives. But I wanted to improve the transport system across Europe for people with disabilities. Who could argue against that? Well, the EU weren't interested in having even a conversation about it. So there were frustrations with it, and you only have to look at how some parts of southern Europe have been so very badly affected by the single currency to think that everything is very far from perfect. But despite all that, I felt that the imbalance, the benefit to us was to stay in. Well, the key thing for me now is that we bring the country back together again. Whether you were a Remainer or a Leaver, we have had a vote from the British people. And the British people are bigger than any individual politician. They are the people who make the calls, so we are all now implementers. And we have a big challenge in implementing this decision. I have to say, knocking on doors, you've talked to people, they say, oh, just get on with it. We want you politicians to get on with it. Unfortunately, everybody has a rather different definition of what it actually is. But I think there are certain things that are enough of a consensus, and that means control of our borders, setting our immigration policy, control of our laws so that we are setting our own rules, not receiving them, and control of our money, so we decide what we want to be in and we get to stop having to pay our EU membership fees. So the three key red lines. And the withdrawal agreement and the proposed trading arrangements in the future deliver upon those. That's why I will be supporting the Prime Minister's withdrawal agreement. As we set off into what will be a few very lively days and quite a big moment in our parliamentary history, we'll have a meaningful vote only a few days away and some pretty passionate debate on the way, but I intend to support that withdrawal agreement. Yes, this withdrawal agreement does deliver Brexit. The key thing is that we would not be members. We would have an end to paying our membership fees, and quite clearly we will be legally out. I also think, though, that we should be trying to maintain a good relationship, a working relationship with the EU and all of our neighbouring countries. These are countries which have similar economies and similar values to ourselves. We already have significant trade with them, significant cultural ties with them. We have a lot of people from the United Kingdom living in Europe, and vice versa. We go there on holiday, and vice versa. So we want to have good ties with them. So it's about being good neighbours, but outside the political arrangement. Well, I think actually that question has been overtaken by the referendum. The referendum result is a decision made by the British people. We've taken a referendum approach on constitutional matters before, and the British people are bigger than any individual politician. It wasn't an aggregate of constituency by constituency, and I know that Harrogate voted to remain very tightly as a borough, and obviously you respect individual results, but we weren't voting as boroughs, we were voting as a nation, and the British people have made that decision. And even if the vote was taken by constituency or by borough, it would still have been taken to leave, because more constituencies voted to leave than to stay. So while people are saying constituency MPs should reflect their constituency, but I think a lot of it is seeking to overturn the result, but it simply wouldn't overturn the result. But it wasn't a constituency by constituency result, it was the nation as a whole, and the nation as a whole has made that decision. Whether we agree with it or whether we don't, the nation is bigger than one individual politician. That's why we all have to now row behind the deal and make the best of it. It is in our national interests to have a smooth Brexit that delivers on Brexit, of course, but also delivers in a smooth way to help people with planning, either business or personally. So I don't really feel that the constituency vote should change the national mood. The national mood is a difficult thing, because we've had a period of great division, and that actually, I have to say, is a matter of some regret. I spend much of my time in politics trying to bring people together to solve problems, and the EU referendum did exactly the opposite. It divided political parties, communities, workplaces, families. We now need to bring people back together again. Well, I think we will see some very passionate debate. This has been the process that we've had almost decades, actually, of debate about the UK relationship with Europe, and it's coming to a head. And I think we will have some very passionate debates, passionate speeches on all sides. And I think that's probably a good thing. This is an important matter, and people should have strong views and then go out and say them. But one of the challenges, I think, has been that for some people who have very passionately held views on both ends of the spectrum, this isn't a matter of individual policy. It's almost like a matter of personal belief and theology, almost identity in themselves. And that's why we get such strong opinions and people who aren't willing to compromise. You can't really compromise on a question of your own personal identity and sense of identity. So that's why these things are tough. So we'll see passionate debates, and I think it'll go right down to the wire. We need to deliver the terms of the referendum. But how we do that and how we set up things for the future is a very complicated question. Divorces are complicated, and this is a giant divorce. So we are having to separate out years of integration of our legal systems, making sure that we have got anchored in the UK all the legal and regulatory stuff that's been handled in Europe over the past few years. These are complicated questions. So while we've got some people who are involved in the practical detail of that separation, we've got some people in Parliament and across our communities too, who have really passionately held views one way or the other, and who are not interested in compromising. So I have had an equal number of emails and letters in saying, no deal, leave now, full stop. And I've had at the same time, in the next envelope or the next email, we shouldn't be leaving at all, it's ridiculous. So how do you bring people together when they have such widely held and impossible to reconcile views?